Okay, Acts chapter 5, verses 12 through 16. So, title is Showing God's Power Through Your Congregation. And while we probably don't have the abilities that Peter did, I think one of the main reasons is unlike what some people think, we don't have apostles any longer. That authority, I think, died with them, partly. Although, I'm not one to deny that God can still heal, should he choose to do so, through prayer and congregational action, such as, I don't know if Brother uh, McCarg ever described to you the one time he saw somebody anointed with oil and the elders of the church prayed for him. He shared that with us my second year in college. And that's an interesting phenomena. I'm not sure I know what to think about that. But nevertheless, what we have here is Peter showing God's power. And we can show God's power too. Now, it's not going to be, again, it's not going to be as, I start to say exciting, but as showy as what this is. I don't think that was God's intention. It was just to reaffirm the teaching of the apostles, although most of their teaching came out of the Old Testament. Go back to Acts chapter 2 and find that. But what we do see is that God's power is showing through particularly Peter. Peter is on showcase here, but the apostles as well. Number one, he's confirming the congregation, and by that I mean Peter, by showing his power on their behalf. Jesus had done a similar thing when he was teaching and preaching on this earth. Perhaps a bit more than Peter ever did, but in this case, and in this instance, during this time frame, we really don't have a strong, this happened on this date through this date type of response, but we do know this is right after the healing of the man at the gate beautiful, probably from the way things read, is probably a few weeks that this occurred. Doesn't last forever. But it does confirm that the congregation, it confirms Peter as the authority or as the leader of the congregation. And I think we can glean from that, fearing God opened the door to greater power because of verse 11. It says, a great fear came upon all the church, and upon as many as they heard these things. So there's a real need for the churches to fear God. And I'm afraid that some of the churches that we have don't fear God. Some of the churches are doing it by way of methodology or by bringing in the band or whatever. And while some of those methods, if God is leading you to do, is okay, I don't think that's how God intended for us to build the congregation. We need to fear God. I think that's really where God is wanting us to focus here. Number one, fearing Him made the people's hearts and minds right with God. And that's more important to God than any amount of numbers. You know, if we've got 12,000 people coming, but none of them are right with God, what good are we doing? You know, unless we're trying to reach them to get them right with God. But that means some of those 12,000 has got to be right with God. And it just doesn't always, I don't see that happening in a lot of our quote, mega churches. I'm not really sure I like that term, but nevertheless, number two, he gave them power to do supernatural works to confirm them. That's just really primarily Peter and the apostles. We read that they wrought many miracles. Paul addresses, of course, the demise of some of the more flashy supernatural works, tongues and miracles and things of that nature, ended because of the coming of the canon or the New Testament. So, you know, this is a way for Peter and his group to distinguish themselves from the Jews. The fact of the matter is God is putting forth His Spirit in this fashion. Now, God still can do this, no doubt about that. And I guess you'll notice there's no headline there. And their numbers were so great that they had to meet at the temple to worship, which makes sense. You had brought up earlier, I think, that they had been meeting at the upper room, which no doubt was big, but probably wasn't built to hold thousands and thousands. And we have record of, depending on how you look at it, 3,000 to 8,000, 5 to 8,000 people. Plus, there's a mention here, kind of a paradox type of statements. That one, verse 13, and the rest durst no man join themselves to them, but the people magnified them. They honored them. But also that the believers were more added to the church in verse 14, kind of a contradictory type of statement. But I think we can understand it to be that some of these folks were periphery folks, what we would call periphery. They're not really fully engaged. They're in awe of what's going on, but they're more worried about what the people outside think. Then there's those who are truly believers who come in and they don't care what anybody else thinks. They go ahead and join, even though it's controversial. So there's both of those. But they're meeting at the temple to worship because their numbers are so great. And that is, of course, they're drawing people to worship, the Jews to worship, and they're drawing them, and Peter's and the apostles are speaking to them. So, fearing God revealed true believers and a high regard. Again, we have this paradox or this tension. Really, I think it's more tension in there. There's a group that will join. There's a group that are amazed but won't join. But it's all giving a high regard. There's some who saw it have done Ananias and Sapphira and trembled. I just listed Ananias because Sapphira is a long word, and I don't think I wanted to go through it. But that's what happened to these folks. They saw this, they understood what was going on, but others saw the signs of the power of God and joined them. So there was some fear, probably about an Ananias. There's probably some fear about the periphery people, as I've mentioned. There were some who said, you know what, I see God in this. I'm going to be a part of it. I want to trust Christ. And so, number three, they all recognized that God was working in the apostles' ministry. When people begin to see that God is working in a ministry, that's where they get into high regard. I don't remember what class it was that, and it might have been some of my own outside reading for a class, but there was a mention of, and it's a good thought about it. A church is can be classified into four different ones. People don't know about it, and it's an obscure place. Is one square. It's in a square within four squares. And the lowest level is people don't know about your church, and it doesn't have any kind of reputation, good or bad. The second level is you see people know about your church, and it's got a bad reputation. And that's the second level. It's probably the second worst place. Some people switch those, but it doesn't matter. The third place is that some people know about it. Very few people know about it, but it has a good reputation. And the best place to be is to have a good reputation, and a lot of people know about it. And so that is, Peter is in this fourth category. A lot of people know about it. There's a good reputation, and there's a good rapport there. So they're all recognizing that God is working in, particularly the apostles' ministry. We're going to find out later on he's also working in 7 guys who later become deacons. So, pardon me. But he is working in the apostles' ministry right now. Remember, the last few verses, 15 to 16, fearing God brought the people closer to the Lord, to him. Notice it says in verse 15, and I guess I better put my eyes on because I cannot see. Insomuch that they brought forth the sick into the streets and laid them in the beds and couches, that at least the shadow of Peter passing by might overshadow some of them. And there came out also a multitude of the cities around about into Jerusalem, meaning sick folks, and those vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed every one. Now, Peter was meeting a need as well as confirming, so there was no need there. But it brought the people out and brought them to God. Number one, the people were drawn to God's power to heal them through Peter. And so they were just wanting his shadow to come over them. Now, I really don't know, much whether how many people got healed because Peter's shadow fell on them. But I will assure you this: the people that talk about holding up their handkerchief and praying over it and sending it in and all that stuff is, well, there's an old-fashioned Texas word. It's called malarkey, and there are other terms that Texans use and that kind of stuff, but we'll leave those to other people to say. Second of all, even Peter's shadow was considered to be able to heal their disease. Indications are he was able to do this. It's an interesting little differentiation from what Jesus did, although maybe that's where they got it from. I really don't know. This is one of those puzzling passages about this. It's a tempest in a teapot. It's not a big deal, but it is where God is working and the power is flowing. So, the apostles reached into the neighboring communities by his power. Notice that in the latter part. There also came multitude out of the cities around about Jerusalem. If we look at Jerusalem, although I don't think that's the one that's tribal. Maybe it's this one. Yeah, it's this one here. We can read here, there's Jerusalem, there's Bethpage, Bethany, Bethlehem, all within walking distance. Emmaus is, I don't know how far that is, a little further on down the line, 15 miles. It's about 15, maybe 18 miles down according to that map. And so they could have come from as far as Emmaus and came and were healed. So God's power draws people. We still have God's power. I want you to understand, we still have God's power. God's Spirit is still available. Now, it doesn't happen in this way. Maybe it's not as flashy, but I want you to know God can heal folks. We were watching, I don't know if you've ever seen it or not, the Kendrick Brothers War Room. It's a good movie, good show. But nevertheless, God's power is still there, still able to change people. And so we need to let our community see the power of God in our congregations. If they feel like we don't have power, that's just it. They're not going to be drawn to it. And sometimes it's because we don't let them know about the Lord's power to change. Miracles still happen. The biggest miracle we still have is salvations. That is a miracle in and of itself. And we need to remember that we need to let the community see the power of God. We need to help your congregation unify around the purpose of God. God's top priority comes from the Great Commission: reach people. Now, that's what this church is doing. Now, I know there are some who would be sidelined by the fact that this is healing. There's a lot of people just talk about healing and stuff like that. And I feel like it's a missing the point type of thing. Number two, we need to pray and prepare and share the gospel with as many as possible. That is the greatest way we can express God's power, is tell them about how Jesus can transform their lives and can take them out of the gutter, can take them out of their drunken or drug-addicted state. They can make them stronger and so on. But prayer and preparation, letting the Spirit use you, using the Great Commission, and finally, encouraging others to reach out to their part of the community as well. We all do it. It's not just a preacher's job. Whether you like it or not, it's not just a preacher's job. And I grant you, it is my job, but it's not just my job. It's your job too, to reach people for the cause of Christ. Now, what was happening there should happen here, exalting our congregation and His Word in the community. Notice that they were at Solomon's porch gathering, and of course what they were probably doing there was both healing and teaching and reaching and so on, talking about the Lord, talking about the crucifixion, talking about the resurrection, talking about what people needed to do to trust Christ, turn away from their sin. So we need to tell others about the congregation's strong points and invite them. And I think that we have some strong points, even in spite of the fact of our size. We have some good fellowship. We are a warm, friendly church, and we can encourage one another easily. And I think that's a good way to go. I think we need to be inviting others based upon our strong points. They will remind everyone the Word has the power to change them. Sometimes people get to doubting that. They do. But the Word can change you. Prayer can change you. Prayer can change others. The Holy Spirit can move in hearts. And we need to remember and remind everyone that we can do that and build up those in teaching and preaching ministries to people nearby. In other words, don't run your preacher down. That's worse. That's the worst thing you can do. If you don't like your preacher, maybe you need to find a new one or something. I don't know. So, I'm not talking about this church necessarily, but there's a lot of churches that try to instead run off the preacher who's doing the best he can and preaching the word. And that happens. So letter C, exalt God in your congregation and in your sphere of influence. This is one of the things that has to happen. We need to lift up the Lord in praise and worship during weekly services. That's what we're here for. Not to, if you can sing tenor on the opera, great, but you don't have to. You can sing from the heart, right? I mean, if I can sing, anybody can sing. This is the way it is, right? So the fact of the matter is, we need to sing from the heart. It's more about what the heart is, That's why Psalm 150 is there. Make a joyful noise, amen? So anyway, let's move on. Second of all, live before others in awe of God and in obedience to His Word. You know what? People hear what you say, but when your life matches what you say, it makes a difference, and they'll listen to you. So we need to live in awe. And don't worry about the past. Worry about right now. The dotted past and so on. So we need to encourage others to exalt God for what Christ did on the cross. That's really our biggest thing, is to exalt Christ for dying for our sins. That's really where we're at. So, all right, comments, questions? Go to the complaint department. But anyway, comments, questions, Billy? Okay. Let's talk about, wow, man.
I don't believe you here for a pen. There's not one.
I don't need a pen. Let's do pray for John.